principle of polluter pays. So there is a principle of polluter pays, right? Because of this polluter pays, right? There is already this principle, polluter will pay. इसका भी extension है climate reparation because the nations that are developed, they have done a lot of emission, so they must pay, they must do reparations for this. Now, so for climate change, there is adaptation, there is mitigation, and there is loss and damage. These are the three things. Now there is a need to balance all of this. You cannot say that I will only adapt. You will not say I will only mitigate, and you will not say, of course, that there will be only loss and damage. You need to balance all of this. This is the first issue. This balance is not present. Why is this balance not present? Because of the difference between developing and developed countries. The developing countries say that loss and damage must be a separate mechanism. The developed countries say no, it will not be a separate mechanism. I'll pay you for what is happening today, not what has happened in the past. I will not admit guilt for what is in the past. Developing countries say that you include loss and damage outside the fund for adaptation. The developed countries say no, I will put it inside the fund for adaptation. I'll give you one fund, you want to take it for loss and damage, you take it, or you want to take it for adaptation, you take it like that. So what is the ethical dimension that developing countries are saying? They are saying that there must be corrective justice. You must correct your historical wrongs. Like we saw, there was an environmental legislation that was there for correcting the historical wrongs against tribals. What was that called? The Forest Rights Act. We have read that, right? So just as Forest Rights Act was correcting the historical injustices, developing countries say you give us loss and damage to correct the historical injustices. The developed countries say no, there must be distributive justice. It is a common problem. Everyone must distribute the issue based on current standing, not what has happened in the past. Now, before we read the problems of climate finance, one more difference here is that developing countries focus on adaptation. Why? Because developing countries do not have the green technologies required today to reduce carbon emission. Developing India का सोचो, India depends so much on coal for its energy needs. India although is trying very hard in renewable energy, we are taking some wonderful steps, but currently we don't have mitigation mechanisms. We don't have the ability to say that okay, from tomorrow we will not use coal. Coal is a huge source of carbon, we will stop using coal. We can't reduce the source right now. So developing countries focus on adaptation. Developed countries have that technology. They have nuclear technology that's advanced. They have renewable energy. They have solar energy technology that is advanced. They have green hydrogen technology that is advanced. So what do the developed countries focus on? They focus on mitigation. They say that okay, now everybody will reduce carbon dioxide emissions. We have green technology. You reduce your carbon dioxide emissions. We also reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. This is the second contention point. One contention point is loss and damage. Okay. Will you pay or will you not? The second idea is should we adapt or should we mitigate? This is the second political question. Now, third thing. In climate finance, climate finance is coming from developed countries to developing countries. They are paying for their problems, right? So there are developed and there are developing countries and they are paying, right? So there is a 3S problem. There is a 3S problem of scope. Developed countries are biased towards mitigation. बता दिया क्यों? Developed countries are biased towards mitigation. Then there is a problem of scale. There is reluctance of developed countries to pledge. Scaling, they are not scaling, they are not increasing their finance. So there is a reluctance by the developed countries to pledge. Third, there is an issue of speed. There are lagging funds. Whatever they have pledged, even that they are not giving on time. So this is the fourth issue, climate finance issue. Now we have understood the basic ideas of climate change negotiations. We just understand some terms, and then we'll go on to read further. But tell me till here, the contention between the developed and developing countries, the issue of climate finance, adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, are these clear to you? Right? If these are clear to you, I will ask you a question. If there is an organization called Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, if there is a coalition for disaster resilience, will India be a part of it? Of course, yes. Because disaster resilience is about what? Disaster resilience is about adaptation. And India, as a developing country, as a voice of the global south, is in favor of disaster resilience. If there is an initiative called the Global Methane Pledge to reduce the sources of methane, has India signed it? No. Why? Because this reducing of sources is what? It is mitigation. India cannot afford to do mitigation right now. So India is not a member of the Global Methane Pledge right now. We may accede to it later, but right now we said no. We cannot mitigate. What can we do? We can adapt. So now when we read international conventions, we will read from this perspective. We will understand this perspective. We will always keep this background thing in mind. It will be very easy for us now to remember all the international conventions. But please tell me, till here are things clear? Okay, just tell me if now things are clear, right? Okay, wonderful. Great that things are clear and you're enjoying it. Great. So now when we understand international conventions, how we're going to study international conventions? We're going to study them from the start. We're going to study them from the starting that happened in 1972, how it went further, then how we reached the current Paris Agreement, what is happening in Paris Agreement, etc., etc. What is the joint implementation, what is field development mechanism, what is adaptation fund, what is mitigation fund. But before this basic idea was important. Now let us study some terms. The first term is greenwashing. Greenwashing, what does it mean? It is misleading the general public to believe that a company, a country, a civic administration is actually more environment friendly than they actually are. Right? A related idea is sports washing. Sports washing is what? You use a global sports event to wash your hands of your human rights violations. The way Qatar has done for this this year's FIFA World Cup. They have hosted the FIFA World Cup. Everybody is talking about what beautiful stadiums they have built, how great their organization skills have been. But whose backs and blood and sweat have these stadiums been built on? They've been built on the stadium, they have built the stadiums on the backs of Indian workers, of Nepali workers, of Pakistani workers, of Sri Lankan workers, of South Asian workers whose human rights they have taken. Right? So they have what sports washing. Everybody will wash their hands of Qatar's human rights record because they have a wonderful sports event. So greenwashing is what? You are misleading people into believing that you are environmentally sound, but you are actually not. So there are 6 forms of greenwashing. The first one is fibbing. Fibbing means that you are making environmental claims that are simply false. Second is no proof. You make a claim which cannot be proved. There is no way to prove it. So it is a no proof. Then there is a hidden trade-off. Hidden trade-off is you suggest that a particular product is green, it is environmentally friendly because of only one particular criteria, only one thing. Right? You don't measure the overall impact, you just see one thing. Then it could be vagueness. You are purposely non-specific about the materials and the things that you have used. Then there are less evils. Less evils are that you are actually putting better labels, misleading labels on a product that is actually harming the environment. The last one is irrelevance. You are saying that I am not using this product and you are claiming you are very green. But that product has already been banned. That product has been banned. But you are saying that, okay, see, I am so green, I am not using that banned product. Is it relevant? You cannot use it because it is already banned. So this is also a form of greenwashing. You are showing that you are green without actually being green or environment friendly. Okay. Next concept we have to understand is Keeling curve. Okay. First, I want you to all read this slide. Okay. Let's read this slide completely. Then I'll tell you something very interesting about it. The Keeling curve is a graph that shows the long-term increase of atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration since late 1950s. समझ आ रहा है? That long-term increase in carbon dioxide from late 1950s is shown by Keeling curve. The curve is named after Charles David Keeling, who started measuring atmospheric carbon dioxide at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii in 1958 and continued to measure till his death in 2005. Then now it has been continued by Ralph Keeling, who is his son, and a team of scientists. Right? Is the slide well made? Right, first tell me, have you understood everything on the slide? This slide was made completely with the help of ChatGPT. I have not written a single word on this slide. I just told ChatGPT, tell me about Keeling curve. So now we revise ChatGPT. What is ChatGPT? It is generative, pre-trained transformer. Generative AI meaning what? It can generate content. Pre-trained. It only has information till 2021 September or some limit. So it is pre-trained about the information. Transformer. It uses encoder and decoder to follow natural language processing. When I ask it what is Keeling curve, it can do pattern analysis. Read from various sources. Give me a unique answer because it can process language naturally. Not process the language as normal computers. It can also process the language that humans use. NLP, we have also all studied all of this before. We have also studied how a neural network works. I just wanted to show you the potential of ChatGPT. I have not written a single word there. Okay? Alright. It is an iconic representation of increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration, primarily caused by burning of fossil fuel and land use. Right? For the exam, it is enough to remember that Keeling curve is related with carbon dioxide emission and it has been constantly increasing. This is already know. Right? Okay. Now let's look at adaptation gap report. First thing you have to remember is it is released by UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme. What is UNEP? When was it formed? Where is its headquarters? Why was it formed? We understand this today. Okay, but first we need to know that this report is published by UNEP. Okay, now what would be the meaning of adaptation gap? You know what adaptation is? So adaptation gap refers to the difference between the current level of adaptation and the level of adaptation that is necessary in the future on the basis of climate. So if climate change is happening, there is a level of adaptation that we need, and there is a current level of adaptation. There is a gap. This gap between your current level and this gap of the actual level, right? This is the adaptation level. For example, to clear the films, you need a certain saturation level. If you are here, there is a preparation gap. So this is the adaptation gap. This adaptation gap report is published by the United Nations Environment Program. This and the meaning of adaptation gap is enough. What are the key findings? We just see the findings, but this is not that important. The findings are that 84% of the countries that are parties to the UNFCCC, parties means they have signed and ratified the UNFCCC. The countries that are parties to the UNFCCC, 84% of them have at least one national adaptation and planning instrument. So at least 84% countries, 8 out of 10 countries have at least made an adaptation plan. Okay, then there is a pledge of $100 billion to be given from the developed to the developing countries. What is this pledge? We will see. But there is a pledge by the developed countries to give $100 billion per year to deal with the effects of climate change. That pledge has not been met. They are 17 billion short. And adaptation finance gap, meaning the amount of money that was required for adaptation and the amount of actual money that has been given. The required money and the actual money. This finance gap is very huge in developing countries, and it is 5 to 10 times greater than the amount of money that is currently coming. So the gap is 5 times more than the amount of money that is actually being given for adaptation. Now you can assume this and understand this. Developed countries don't want to give money for adaptation, right? So since they don't want to give money for adaptation, there is a huge adaptation finance. I hope the context is now clear. Okay. Now there is a principle called locally led adaptation. Locally led adaptation says that adaptation efforts to adapt to climate change, efforts to say that okay, climate change is going to happen, what changes we have to do to adapt to this coming emergency. This locally led adaptation should be done at the local. It should be done with local communities. What is this? Bottom up approach. We should ask the community at the ground level what do you want, not impose from an ivory tower and say okay, this is how you're going to adapt. This is not what we're going to do. We need locally led adaptation principle. This is done by the Global Commission on Adaptation. Okay, they must strengthen locally led adaptation. Right? This is a new idea, locally led adaptation. This is by who? The Global Commission on Adaptation. Now by logic, tell me, will India be a member of Global Commission on Adaptation? Will India look at the globe? Now, there is a principle called locally led adaptation. Locally led adaptation says that adaptation efforts to adapt to climate change, efforts to say that okay, climate change is going to happen, what changes we have to do to adapt to this coming emergency. This locally led adaptation should be done at the local level. It should be done with local communities. What is this? Bottom up approach. We should ask the community at the ground level what do you want, not impose from an ivory tower and say okay, this is how you're going to adapt. This is not what we're going to do. We need locally led adaptation principle. This is done by the Global Commission on Adaptation. Okay, they must strengthen locally led adaptation. Right? This is a new idea, locally led adaptation. This is by who? The Global Commission on Adaptation. Now by logic, tell me, will India be a member of Global Commission on Adaptation? Will India be a member of Global Commission on Adaptation or not? Yes or no? Just write in the comments. Just use logic. Will India be a member of Global Commission on Adaptation? Yes, of course. We are in favor of adaptation. So India is a member of the Global Commission on Adaptation. Okay. Now there is an emissions gap report. Adaptation gap report was released by UNEP. Emissions gap report also released by UNEP. What does it say? That India is the third largest greenhouse gas emitter. But this is what current emissions, not cumulative. And this is what total emissions, not per capita. So currently and in terms of total emissions, India is the third largest emitter. But if you look at cumulative emissions and if you look at per capita emissions, India is not even in the top. Okay. Now the important thing in this emission gap report was that bottom 50% of households contribute 12% of global greenhouse gas, and top 1% contribute 17%. What is this? Lack of intergenerational equity. Not intergenerational, not one generation to the other. Intragenerational equity. Bottom 50% contribute 12% of the global greenhouse gas, and 50% are contributing 12%. Top 1% are contributing 17%. Lack of intragenerational equity. And what is emission gap? Emission gap means that what is the expected level of greenhouse gas to stop climate change or to come under 2 degrees, and what is the actual level? So here actual level will be higher, expected level will be lower, and this will be the emission gap. Who is reading the report? Okay. And Stockholm Conference. I will just take a break for 5 minutes. Now we'll continue from Stockholm Conference and rephrase the Rio Plus 20 conference. Understand where these terms like UNFCCC, where have these terms actually come from? We first understand this, and then on Monday we'll finish with international conventions. All of them will be done, sorted. But अब at least आपको लग रहा होगा कि जो पिछली पकड़ी हुई international conventions थी वो sort हो गई. Now you have an idea. Now things will be clear, right? You will not jumble and mumble things up now. जैसे environmental legislation से किया था, यहाँ भी. Okay. So Stockholm Conference we are going to read next. All right. So I hope everything is clear to here. We'll take a 5 minute break, then continue. Thank you, Subhashi. Also, I'm not answering any questions in this break, okay? I just want to rest so that I can keep further. Guess tomorrow is a holiday. All right, Prashant, noted. Hari, you're welcome. मस्ती क्यों कर रहे हो यार? You're wishing for something, wishing the top 100 only. It's my dream to get into the IFS. 156 will not get me IFS. Anyway, so I'll just go and take some break of 2 minutes and go outside, and then we'll continue. अरे छोड़ो यार, ये टॉप 10 ये सब छोड़ो, forget about it, doesn't matter. Okay, I'm enjoying teaching, I'll just teach. Okay, continue. Let's start with the Stockholm one. Now Stockholm conference was actually the first UN conference on human environment. Okay, so the UN conference on human environment, this has started on 5th June. So why do we celebrate 5th June today? We celebrate it as the World Environment Day. इसीलिए celebrate होता है because the Stockholm conference, the first ever UN conference on human environment, was held on 5th June 1972. Now I have already told you that Srimati Indira Gandhi was the only foreign head of state to attend. So like the Swedish Prime Minister and Srimati Indira Gandhi, she was the only other one to attend. So it shows how India was already committed to the idea of combating environmental and climate change. So she had attended this conference, and that is why it had a huge impact on India. This we have discussed. The Water Act, the Air Act, we have seen that. So in the Stockholm conference, what had happened? 122 countries they came together. They adopted the Stockholm Declaration. This Stockholm Declaration has 26 principles and an action plan for preserving the human environment. Now, Srimati Indira Gandhi, when she went to that conference, she gave a very important quote that you can use in your means, that poverty, it's written on the bottom of the slide, poverty is the worst form of pollution. She gave this quote when she went to the Stockholm conference, and of course this conference had a huge impact on India. Right? So this is the timeline. In 1965, the UN Science Advisory Committee says that okay, human emitted carbon dioxide is leading to warming. Then in 1967, there is a doubling of the CO2 adjustable will lead to 2 degrees centigrade increase. In 1968, the first UNGA summit on climate change, and finally the Stockholm conference and the Sweden initiative was launched. Now, what was agreed in the original Stockholm conference of 1972? What was agreed? It was agreed that the link to that of the Swedish pollution, that Srimati celebrated that because the Stockholm conference, the first ever UN conference on human environment, was held on 5th June 1972. Now, I have already told you that Srimati Indira Gandhi was the only foreign head of state to attend. So, like the Swedish Prime Minister and Srimati Indira Gandhi, she was the only other one to attend. So it shows how India was already committed to the idea of combating environmental and climate change. So she had attended this conference, and that is why it had a huge impact on India, which we have discussed. The Water Act, the Air Act, we have seen that. So in this Stockholm conference, what had happened? 122 countries they came together. They adopted the Stockholm Declaration. This Stockholm Declaration has 26 principles and an action plan for preserving the human environment. Now, Srimati Indira Gandhi, when she went to that conference, she gave a very important quote that you can use in your means, that poverty, it's written on the bottom of the slide, poverty is the worst form of pollution. She gave this quote when she went to the Stockholm conference, and of course this conference had a huge impact on India. Right? So this is the timeline. In 1965, the UN Science Advisory Committee says that okay, human emitted carbon dioxide is leading to warming. Then in 1967, there is a doubling of the CO2 adjustable will lead to 2 degrees centigrade increase. In 1968, the first UNGA summit on climate change, and finally the Stockholm conference and the Sweden initiative was launched. Now, what was agreed in the original Stockholm conference of 1972? What was agreed? It was agreed that countries will not harm each other's environment. They have an action plan to study the Earth's environment. Will not harm each other's environment. We have an action plan to study the Earth's environment. And in this first ever meeting on the human environment under the United Nations, the first ever international body of the United Nations dealing with environment was made, called the United Nations Environment. This UNEP, we have seen adaptation gap, we have seen emissions gap report. This setup it was set up after the Stockholm Conference. Now, certain principles were agreed. But I know there was a Stockholm Declaration with certain principles. So certain principles were agreed. One, you must safeguard natural resources. One is you must safeguard natural resources. Two is you must do poverty alleviation for protecting the environment. Two is you must do poverty alleviation and protect the environment. Third, weapons of mass destruction, they must be stopped. अब ये context कहाँ से आया? Actually in the 1960s, the Cold War was, so उस टाइम पे क्या हुआ था? Countries were testing their nuclear weapons. उस उससे बहुत पोल्यूशन होता है. So against this, in Alaska, an NGO called Greenpeace was formed. This you don't need to remember, but you must have heard the name of this NGO. Greenpeace. It was formed at that time. So वहाँ पे agree किया कि ठीक है, we must stop weapons of mass destruction. Okay, non-renewable sources must not be exhausted. You must not exhaust.